This episode of the WP Minute is brought to you by OmniSend. Do you sell stuff online? Then you need to meet OmniSend, the powerful yet refreshingly intuitive email and SMS tool that helps you make $73 for every dollar spent. OmniSend is that good and effective. You probably know the struggles of investing in digital ads with no guarantee it'll bring money back into your pocket. Use OmniSend and you won't have to find creative ways to make your audience notice you. You just talk straight to them. Use OmniSend pop-ups to build a contact list, then send campaigns directly to people who already want to hear from you. Automate everything with OmniSend. Just set it up once, sit back, and watch those sales roll in. If this sounds too good to be true, check it out at omnisend.com. Visit omnisend.com. Tell them thanks for sponsoring the WP Minute. It's a marathon week for WordPress news. We're back with another live stream, this time joined by Noel Tock of Human Made. Noel, welcome to the WP Minute.
Appreciate it, Matt.
We all know the topic du jour. Earlier this morning, I went for a run. Well, I did a Peloton,
Good for
and then
you.
I went for a run. I'm not afraid
Took
to
a holiday
admit.
from the WP drama.
Yeah, and not afraid to admit that I jump on the Peloton every now and again for the young kids in the crowd. I know they're all making fun of me by being on a stationary bike. I'm sorry, I'm not doing Brad Williams CrossFit. But I came back and I was like, man, lots of people are getting, rightfully so, very emotional about what's happened with the WP Engine V Automatic stuff and with Matt. But I'm not hearing solutions. I'm hearing like emotional hopes and dreams. And a lot of like, we should do this, we should remove that. Wouldn't it be great to have like freedom in WordPress? But I'm not hearing how we get there. And I'm not presenting a how we get there because I don't know either. But maybe we can like hash some of this stuff out on today's live stream. Got questions? Drop them in the question box wherever you're watching this video. Before we get too deep into that stuff, Noel, what have you been up to with Human Made these days?
So I have a bit of a mix of work these days. So I guess many people do know that majority of my time I'm out in Ukraine, where I do various humanitarian work, and then I've also evolved that to beyond humanitarian work. And yeah, it's been an amazing journey in terms of, I guess, continuing the WordPress ethos in many ways, because WordPress is open source, it's benefited humanity in many ways, and then you try to extend that in other fields. But what's been, I guess, amazing out here is that, yes, it's war, it's a humanitarian crisis, and surprisingly, WordPress has also been a big part of the response here. Many of the thousands of new charities that popped up are built on WordPress, be it for prosthetic limbs, humanitarian goods, FPV drones, high-risk evacuations, nonprofit media, and more. And it's powerful to know that the software you work on, and that everybody else works on here too, has such an impact. It's software of humanity, and it's a privilege to be a part of. And that's why, despite the WP drama, I think it's amazing to be in the presence of contributors and a community who keep going, and even today shipped the first iteration of WordPress 6.7. And WordPress, humanity, this planet needs this kind of software at a fundamental level.
Yeah, that last part is very important. It's something that I 100% agree with, because it goes beyond, and I think this stuff gets lost a lot in in the discussion of how WordPress is being made. Like, we get into these little narrow viewports of, oh, this is a blogging tool versus this is a web design tool versus this is a CMS. I mean, I see it as some of these points that you've just described are like, oh, this is software that impacts humanity at various levels that aren't just the freelancer building her, web design business, or, the school the higher ed system that needs a 3,000, college CMS installation. Like, this is for like humans. We need to get words out. We need to get structured content out for these hot spots that are happening. Might only be there for a month, 6 months, a year, but these are things that are very, very important. And I see WordPress as far beyond the viewports of freelancer or CMS kind of thing. What other And you have human made and you have Altus, right? Let's frame what Altus is for the discussion today, because we will obviously be talking about WPM.
Yeah, 100%. So human made and Altus both serve the enterprise. We try to give enterprise the best WordPress experience possible. That is as simple as it is, and I think everything we've built out over the years since 2011 and beyond really has served enterprise. And even when we departed the VIP program back then, it was because we didn't really see all the features we wanted. We wanted to try it ourselves also, and that gave us a really unique perspective that complements then the other players that are also doing enterprise. And all of that is kind of coming together where we now have the Scale Consortium, which is multiple enterprise agencies coming together. So really just, despite the challenges you see in the economy today and a lot of competition, a lot of ad spend, a lot of stimulus checks going to, these headless composable CMSs and all this other stuff, we're, trying to provide just a great service platform outcomes for enterprises across the globe.
Let's talk just briefly. Again, we're gonna get to the topic of the day, but let's talk about the business side of WordPress agencies for a moment. I came back recently from WordCamp US. I believe your business partner was there.
Yeah,
I think I saw him
and
going through the crowd.
A lot of our team was there.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to chat with him, but I've heard mixed things. I ran an agency for a decade, which was nearly a decade ago at this point, but running an agency was tough, man. It's tough to run an agency. I feel like you're always one paid check away from bankruptcy, getting paid from the client, and it's not an easy space. It's a fun space, but also not an easy space. What's the temperature? And you're from a different vantage point, like you have this global presence, but what's the temperature of agency space these days for delivering WordPress projects?
Yeah, I'd say it's a mix of factors. I definitely spoke about this at WordCamp Asia in terms of just the overall WordPress economy. I guess my most recent thought was the amount of the ratio of sponsor space in terms of square meters versus the net new amount of sites that are launched on WordPress is probably at an all-time high or all-time low or anyway, it's just extremely competitive in the space now. Like we had our honeymoon phase. That was it was a really steep growth curve. We've seen WordPress market share, if we can call it that, the mystical 43% plateau. So regardless if you believe in that number or not, it's still you're still following a certain trend over years, which used to be very steep and now is quite flat. There's a lot of competition, there's a lot of pressure, and we still believe that WordPress is probably one of the best solutions in enterprise today, but there's a lot of work that's needed around not only then selling ourselves, but also selling enterprise WordPress as a concept from a product marketing perspective, and then just the sort of challenges we face in the economy. US was probably the fastest to kind of come out of challenging times, and still that's not for sure. Europe is somewhat behind, and then Asia is still lagging quite a bit. So yeah, it's a tough time to be in the game. I feel like we're learning a lot. We're having to adapt. We're having to pick up skill sets that we didn't necessarily, or that we took for granted maybe 10 years ago, in terms of building out a very comprehensive sales and marketing team or a commercial team. And yeah, I'm very proud of how far we've come in that regard. But yeah, you're right. It's a tough environment. But ultimately, with a lot of the budgets, enterprise budgets, maybe being focused towards AI and other like emerging technology, do companies really want to hold on to large license costs and large maintenance costs of proprietary CMSs that do the same thing as WordPress? These are the kind of more macro things that I'd say we hold on to and where we see a lot of opportunity within the enterprise space.
And when you say there's a lot of competition, I just want, for clarity's sake, is it competition like there's more WordPress agencies coming on board and it's harder to sell amongst ourselves, or are we getting external pressures and competition from other CMSs and platforms throughout the world?
Probably a bit of both, but I'd probably look to how is WordPress marketed to the rest of the world. So Gartner and Forrester still haven't opened up the category of WordPress. They don't understand WordPress as a open source piece of software. They understand it, or Gartner, they both understand it as WordPress VIP, which makes it obviously like quite challenging in that regard for the broader ecosystem. But yeah, there's still there's been a massive marketing push from the whole composable headless kind of space, and then some of these players like Adobe and Sitecore creating these more comprehensive suites with personalization, A/B testing, customer journey orchestration, so that it feels like a much larger product, whereby CMS is just a subset of that. And I guess a large part of the economy went through either this this large all-in-one suite, and then got disrupted by the headless composable ads and players that came into the space. And we've never had a very strong product marketing position towards that. So we interface with the market where we can, but it's not that enterprise WordPress is just receiving inbound leads as much as it should.
Lots of times we're wrapped, or at least some of the conversations I have, we're wrapped up in we're losing ground to Wix and Webflow. Is that a thing in the enterprise? Well, maybe not the Wix side of it. I don't know. Maybe with Wix Studio you see it, but is Webflow a thing? Is Framer a thing? Like when you're in the enterprise space, aside from the we'll build something for you with headless components, is there another player in the ring who's more of a nameplate that people can identify to?
I'd say it's quite fragmented once you pass, Acquia / Drupal and WordPress. It also depends if are you competing for the primary CMS? Are you competing for the secondary CMS? And that's where I'd say, Webflow and Wix Enterprise, like really nice page and well put together. It's good positioning. HubSpot Pages or HubSpot CMS, I'm not sure what it's called. That's a very popular secondary CMS. So there's a lot of players in there. The more comprehensive, hey, this can be your primary web experience. That's a difficult conversation. And also we haven't, as an industry, come up with a very comprehensive sort of list or marketplace that's very interoperable with all the enterprise tech. And sure, we have integrations for Salesforce. We have integrations here. We can use APIs to connect to various things, but we haven't productized that marketplace layer around enterprise specifically to say, here's your one-click Next.js WordPress project, a starter kit that is on WordPress.org or somewhere else.
I don't want to skip over the primary CMS versus secondary CMS because I think that's important that people understand this and help me understand this, because if I'm thinking of it, I want you to clarify it. So when I was selling enterprise hosting at Pagely, for example, many years ago, WordPress was a secondary CMS because some of the brands I was playing with, they were like, hey, we're a marketing team. They won't let us touch the big CMS over there. We need something we can move faster with, and WordPress is a great solution for that. Therefore, that is the secondary CMS in this massive enterprise that we have. Is that a fair statement? Secondary being like teams can move faster with this?
Yeah, that's extremely fair. It's the pragmatic, cheap solution. Hey, we don't have that much budget, and it's been a great marketing strategy for WordPress. Get your foot in the door and then grow from there. Try to either grow vertically up, in this particular department where you are in enterprise, or grow horizontally because other teams hear about how this has worked and there's already an approved vendor and procurement. So then you're able to grow from there, and we've certainly made those experiences. But that is a bottoms up approach to, which is a hacky way because we're always low budget. We don't have global spend that's being used for all agencies, and that's very different than an Adobe that will come in and maybe target everyone, host dinners, invite you to the conferences, and fair play. There's nothing wrong with all these things, but it is a very impressive go-to-market, scrappy, let's say, approach to things.
Sounds a little bit like the sales team at WP Engine when I was selling against them back at the day in Pagely. I've always looked, and we'll start to pivot over to having the discussion about, of course, the stuff happening this week. Pagely, bootstrap company, of course, everyone, well, not everyone, but I guess folks who've been in the game long enough know that Josh Strebel, Sally Strebel both started the company. Bootstrap, no outside investors. We were very much against the grain of, the typical big hosting providers out there. They eventually sold to GoDaddy, but I competed with WP Engine quite often, with clients. And it was a very typical enterprise sales that I was going up against. They would come in, they would big clients would tell me, hey, WP Engine's willing to fly out. They're willing to demo to us. They're going to undercut your contract by 30, 40%. These were things that, a cash strap business, not strap, but a bootstrap business couldn't really compete with. And WP Engine was, and maybe still is these days, it's been a while, typical sales, enterprise sales, and lots of money involved on that side of the spectrum. And WP Engine is nowhere near like the Adobes and the Microsofts of the world that will go out and sell this stuff. My tweet this morning, how much will it cost to clone and maintain a community-driven .org mirror? How do we get mass adoption? Because don't forget, WordPress.org is hand-coded into the bowels of WordPress. Which host will support it, right? If all of a sudden there's the utopian world and all of a sudden there's another mirror out there that we can use, will all the hosts support it in the world that we know these days? And what's that long-term sustainability? WP Engine is seemingly about to do it, right? They've just said that people can now update plugins. How does their iteration evolve? Does it become a HubSpot-style marketplace and only available to WordPress engine sites or WP Engine sites long-term? Is it a true marketplace? Like, what is it that WP Engine is going to do with their mirror, loosely speaking? How can we get this WordPress independence? Is it even possible with all the stuff that people are asking for? So I say all that to hand the mic over back to you and say, what are your thoughts on a mirror?
Yes. I
Yeah, the answer is yes. Click.
After 40 questions.
Yeah.
I'd say there's so many ways to approach this, because I like the bottom-up approach in terms of, hey, we just need a mirror because the mirror on WP.org is being blocked to us. Like, that's one side of the story, and that just doesn't seem like the big play. And when I tweeted my thread the other day, it was really about the kind of the top-down approach to this, where it's not necessarily how you build it, but why you build it, because doing this properly isn't about a marketplace, it's about power. And power doesn't belong to the person who forks the software, but rather to those that fork the community. And a marketplace that does this effectively and has the right, let's say, has the right marketplace / community around extensions, plugins, themes, premium functionality, potentially giving people credibility and authority for various work they do. So you have profiles that can start leading into premium mechanics in terms of getting paid. If you have pro upgrades and things like that available to you, because obviously you're a lot closer to the customer. A platform like that can act as organic acquisition. WP Engine does spend a lot of money on paid search, so part of this can offset. And this is not really only about WP Engine in this regard. There's various players, even WordPress.com, created their own marketplace. They've brought these pieces in, and they're able to create a better customer journey for some of these customers that only know WordPress.com, instead of having to faff around with going on .org. How does this work and how does that work? This is kind of the challenge with this whole ecosystem. And then the sort of other challenge to all of this is, even if you go ahead and do all these things, to what end? Are you trying to create a WP.org pure competitor, or are you trying to service specific verticals out there? So if you go on Wix or you go on Squarespace, they're guaranteed to go after hairdressers, anything with booking appointments and all that. Like, they have crafted a journey for that this is their strategic goal, is to take on as much revenue or as much share of the revenue you generate on your websites for your SMB, for your business, so that they can be a part of that. Now, likewise, can something like WP Engine do something like that too? It's quite far for them. They don't promote themselves as going after any vertical or niche. I guess the closest thing would be Flywheel, which goes after designers. So potentially you have an MVP there that has a lot of premium solutions that are just added on to the Flywheel subscription every month. Potentially they're taking on transactions at some point, whatever that may be. You could easily see a world, I guess, come together like that. But the question is, in my mind, is, which customer segment are you going after, and to what end? Because what WP Engine has achieved, probably in my mind, even with the 400 million contribution or not, is they've probably done very well at the customer journey of WordPress hosting, managed WordPress hosting, whatever that may be, and maybe have even reduced churn for the overall ecosystem by providing a better experience there. So what comes next? To what end would you create a marketplace? Is it to capitalize on the webmaster, the web builder, or is it the business owner?
Yeah. And I think many things have come out of this event, which even I didn't know, having been in this space for many, many years. But certainly, like the toothpick holding up the whole industry, which is .org, it can quickly get pulled out, and really coming to light that Matt is funding it and controlling it. You can either look at that as altruistic of being able to like spend all this money, but we just don't know what is involved there, like what that infrastructure looks like. I saw somebody that was actively cloning it. I saw a tweet fly by. They were at like 600 gigs of like X amount of percentage cloned, and just the sheer size of this repo, never mind the traffic hitting it, like the costs are pretty staggering, I'd imagine, for just 1 year of maintenance, let alone like sustaining it infinitely. Do you have a thought on like the size of that infrastructure and what that would run somebody to independently?
That's not my world.
Yeah.
obviously, I think it is extremely expensive, and Matt did share some numbers, and props obviously to him for maintaining all that. But I'm assuming that if you want to achieve some sort of, if your ambition is towards Wix and the Squarespaces of this world, then this investment may make sense for a Newfold, a GoDaddy, a WP Engine, whoever that may be. We've already moved on from the cPanel hosting, or before it was just the FTP hosting, then we had the cPanel hosting. Now we have the sort of managed, where you have nice UI, you have staging, you have all these things, and now we really need more solutions than tools, because we're just kind of there. And this whole no code movement is obviously working for a company like Wix that is able to push over $1 billion in revenue.
Yeah. I think I talked about this in my live stream yesterday with Mark. There had to be something that Matt saw at WP Engine happening that caused this. And it was either he's literally telling the truth and saying, man, I've been asking for years about this commercial deal. That's a whole other discussion. That wasn't something I knew was actively happening.
I didn't know
either. Yeah, I mean,
I think we all found out.
Yeah, we kind of all found out about that. That's like another discussion, whether or not you agree with that model or not. So it was either like he was literally chasing these guys for years, and he's just like, I'm going to just put you on blast at the biggest event on the U.S. side of things, and I don't care what happens. So it was either that, or maybe he knew they were going to do something like a cloned repo and create their own marketplace, and he didn't like that. Or they were going IPO, and he was like, there's no way you're doing IPO without me doing it first. So I'm going to put you on blast here. There had to be something happening there. And years ago, I theorized that HubSpot would buy WP Engine. I thought HubSpot would be a great
like that idea.
acquisition for WP Engine. I thought that's where they were going to go. But I can imagine a world where if out of all the hosts, I think somebody who's going to create that HubSpot marketplace style, it would be WP Engine. And that is pretty scary, I think, because I think that kind of thinker at the enterprise software space, they're not thinking about data portability and moving your site around. They're going to launch a marketplace, and it's going to be vendor lock-in for their stuff. And I think maybe Matt thrust this on to us a little bit faster. This could be something bad that we don't realize now. We're all cheering for WP Engine to save the day. And then a year from now, we might be like, holy shit, they built a marketplace that people can't leave or get software from if they went to GoDaddy or another host. That's my theory on this stuff. Any thoughts on what happens to these marketplaces for players who can support it like a WP Engine?
Again, it comes back to the audience. Would I be a user of this marketplace? Maybe not. Maybe I'd still be using WP.org, and maybe a lot of other people would. I think it's the expression of WordPress here in a way that's not necessarily WordPress anymore. Tumblr is a very good example of that, right? Like it's social platform built on WordPress. It doesn't compete with anything you or I do on a day-to-day basis, and I think that's amazing. So if if you really go deep into a marketplace, you probably really need to know what your customer journeys are, who your audiences are, what the outcomes are. It's that's to me, that's almost expanding the market as opposed to cannibalizing it. I'd say the more altruistic side of this discussion is, I wish that, coming back to the very beginning of WordPress for Humanity and everything, I guess I wish that hyper profitable companies would see this opportunity, or rather privilege, to be part of something greater, to be involved in the discussions, be thought leaders themselves, because the world is just in a challenging spot, and open source projects like WordPress do their part in supporting a better future for all. And if WP Engine would be a larger part of this, I think it would be a net positive, regardless of where marketplace aspirations go and what they end up doing. It's I don't know how much of Automatic's Jetpack competes with WP Engine's business stuff. WordPress VIP doesn't compete with lower tier Bluehost things. There's just a lot of market to go after if things are done properly, and in many places WordPress doesn't necessarily need to be the end solution. It can be a hybrid where it's part of the solution, but it's not necessarily the thing at the forefront.
Let's say somebody launches a clone of WordPress.org.
Yeah, pure clone, like going after clone. Us.
Yep, yeah. They're all coming after us.
Yeah.
From your perspective, what does it take for that to even build momentum? Is it, well, we just have to install this, they have to get people to install this plugin to activate their mirror, and that would allow somebody to start installing stuff from an independent source? How does that momentum even happen if somebody's like, nope, I'm going to do it. I'm all in. I'm going to clone 3 terabytes, and I got plenty of Bitcoin to power this thing for the next couple of years. How does momentum happen? Like, how does that even how is it even possible from your perspective?
I think you have to incentivize the premium plugin developers by giving them a higher commission. I mean, that's probably what it is. You saw that in crypto to a certain extent, where OpenSea was like the big NFT marketplace, and then a number of marketplaces did what was called a vampire attack, by essentially, because everything's visible, you can see all the wallets and how much they transacted with OpenSea, so you could give them a certain amount of tokens, and if they did a certain level of activity on their platform too, those tokens would get released and all that, and it was good money, and it gave them enough time to play around and potentially like the new platform more. So I think these kind of hostile takeovers, which is what you're asking about, I think has to come down to 2 things: money or attention. And attention probably ultimately leads to still ego or money. So it's gonna be pretty primal things, I think.
Yeah, and attention is like one of the hardest things that already exists in the open source world of WordPress, right? Like, I've got this idea, I opened up a ticket. Where is everybody to support this idea I have to bake into WordPress core or to bake into Gutenberg? Like, we already struggle with that kind of backing and support, from a community-driven project. Is it still a community-driven project in your eyes?
Yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't see why not. Yeah, absolutely.
I said yesterday, I've said it before, but I said it again yesterday, most recently, that I think this moment of ripping the Band-Aid off that Matt has done is clearly making us say that if you're voting for WordPress, you're also voting for Matt unequivocally. Like, this is he's in. Yes. Like, you're part of this is with him. So that moving forward, I think we all have to realize that. Fair statement. Your thoughts?
Yeah, good question.
you can say pass if you don't want to.
No, I think he's admitted himself that there might have been better ways to communicate all this, but ultimately, I think his vision throughout the years and his perseverance and saying, hey, we're gonna give back a lot, and the amount of time that Automatic has contributed and the amount of things they've sort of pushed has been a net positive for this growth. Like, I don't think we'd be in double digit numbers without him. So, credit where it's due. Does that mean that it's a pass on everything for the future? Not necessarily. I think it's, it should be a discussion. I think, we're at the size where there's a lot of smart minds inside the community. Yost wrote about it. He's, clearly has a lot of good ideas. There was that project that Morten had put together on WP governance. That was, really, really good. So there's a lot of ingredients out there, I think, that bring us to the next level, and being able to try and pull those together in a way that is almost like the new layer of community for such a large project, I think would be very beneficial to its longevity.
I'm going to highlight two questions or two comments that came through the chat. Webologic says, I think clarity is important. It can't just be down to whether or not you trigger Matt on an off day, 100%. Nomad skateboarding. People are confusing open source with altruism. Open source only means the licensing on the code. It doesn't mean community-led governing body or ownership. I also completely agree with that.
Fine, yeah.
Yeah, I'm really hoping, I was really hoping, then yesterday I saw Matt in the WP Builds live chat, but I was really hoping out of this, we could get more clarity on 5 for the future and what contribution means and like how we can play with that. Because I love the concept from a slogan, from a marketing perspective, and for like encouraging people, look, 5% of whatever it is you do, let's put it back into WordPress and let's get this thing going. But then I saw Matt on a live stream, and people were asking, like, so what does contribution means? And he says, whatever's in your heart. Well, shit. I need a number,
wearing a hoodie
man.
40 hours a week.
Yeah. Like, I need a number, and I hope we can get back to some clarity around that, because ultimately we need that direction so that we don't have this ambiguity of like, am I going to piss you off? Is this enough? Am I doing the right thing? Because I think largely people won't mind the whole 5 for the future thing. It just needs more clarity moving forward.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I'd say we're still in the midst of this Matt Automatic versus WP Engine saga, and probably the dust needs to settle there before we can have these more super detailed conversations on what is this exactly, what is that? Because right now it feels very much like a football rivalry going down on the weekend or something, and you're kind of waiting for the off season to be able to, bring all the pieces back together so that you can once again play another season, but do so with rules that benefit all.
Yeah. As we sort of wrap things up, trying to do this in 40 to 45 minutes today, because these conversations can go on forever. Folks, if you have questions, drop them in the chat, whether about this or Human Made and the body of work that Noel and his team have done throughout the years. Go ahead and drop those questions in the chat. Where do we go from here? I think another thing that comes out of this is now all web hosts are sort of like, oh shit, I got to be careful of how I phrase WordPress, and or where's that license thing? Like, how can I get that so I don't get in trouble? Like, what's the ramifications for the web hosting industry, you think, moving forward after this? Are you waiting to see what happens, or do you think people are already making decisions moving forward?
It must be, the hosts have been so quiet throughout all of this. So part of me wonders, are they, do they also have open questions about what everything means and where everything is going? I really like the one blog, I forget his name, who's always been posting the sort of legal aspects of everything. That's probably been my favorite posts on everything, just because he's always clarified what means what, and that's been extremely beneficial to me. But yeah, it comes back to clarity.
Yeah.
And I think the hosts are absolutely looking for that, and wondering, what does this mean for them? I'm guessing they're probably looking at their own stuff, their own product names, and doing a bit of an internal audit to see, have we misstepped anywhere? We don't want to get caught out on this. That would be my gut feeling. But the whole center stage right now is occupied by WP Engine, who haven't said much themselves, which is obviously quite interesting.
I have up on screen another great question that has come up through us all kind of learning about this licensing thing and the 8% of WP Engine's revenues, which is 30 to 40-ish $million a year, roughly. And people are asking, well, where does this money go? And if it's going directly to Automatic and not the foundation, how much of that money's is Automatic putting back into WordPress? My gut tells me a good portion of it, but Automatic does a lot more. And I don't know how to phrase this, but it's also like things like this that was posted yesterday. The future of the social web is in good hands. Social media in its current form, broken, chaotic, and new organizations, the Social Web Foundation aims to change that. And Automatic is part of that, along with a bunch of other companies and brands that are behind this. So I think when monies go into Automatic, they're a good steward for the open web, which I know...
They're probably the best steward out of all the large companies.
Yeah.
I mean, that's probably one way to look at it, I'd say.
Yeah. And it's hard against the backdrop of stuff like this, right? Because, this stuff is what impacts our branding, our marketing of WordPress when it's like, you have these headlines of Matt calling WP Engine cancer to the ecosystem, and then you're shutting customers off who are just like bystanders in this stuff. And this is the stuff that really makes our job uplifting and WordPress thriving difficult. When I do see things like Automatic is doing, aside from WordPress, that are cool things for the open web. So will all the money go to WordPress? I don't know. I think a good chunk of it will. But also Automatic does some other stuff where that money is going, which is also benefiting the open web.
Yeah, I guess the picture that some people are painting, that the money is needed to fill some revenue gap that Automatic has because Automatic is failing or whatever, I don't believe that to be true. Could Automatic do a better job of listing their contributions or breaking them out as a sort of role model for other companies? Probably, they do a lot. And if you really broke that all out, I think it would not only be quite a large volume, but also very diverse activities. So it's not necessarily just about throwing money at one thing, but also experimenting with different topics, areas, experimenting with different things, not always succeeding. And as you say, I think they're a good steward in that regard. Yeah.
I was drafting a blog post. People who have been listening to this live stream heard me talk about this already. This will be the last sort of thing we chat about. But one of the things cool. I'm not going to publish it anymore because of all this stuff, just because I don't need the stress and it's not going to add value. But one of the things I was saying, writing this blog post, what would I do if I was running Automatic? This was pre any of this stuff. Months ago, I started writing it. And one of the things I was saying was Automatic's just going to strip out everything that is a distraction. Products like Simple Note, which I love, you don't need it anymore. Pocket Cast, love it. Use it every single day as my podcast app. Automatic shouldn't focus it on anymore. Automatic should triple, quadruple all the resources into WordPress. That is the focus. Not even Tumblr, man. I mean, I love the idea of Tumblr and WordPress. Get it out of here, right? Anything that isn't directly WordPress, get it out. We need to focus on WordPress, because they do so much. And I think hyper-focused is still going to happen. And maybe this is that slight direction where we're going to start to see commercial land of WordPress commercial land of Automatic, hyper-focused on revenues and growth for WordPress sake. And I think that's this Band-Aid moment, rip the Band-Aid off moment for me anyway. Any closing thoughts from you?
Yeah, I think you have a good point there. And I'd say that's pretty true of any bull-bear cycle where companies get a bit bloated, do things they don't necessarily need to. I think I was listening to the Verge podcast over a year ago, maybe 2 years ago even, where Matt was talking about working on Tumblr and how that was one of the most humbling experiences for him. He learned a lot. And I think, even if Tumblr doesn't necessarily belong in the Automatic portfolio, he still gets to bring that wealth of experience back. And I think that's extremely beneficial. So, same for us at Human Made. We experiment with different things. We tried to go a bit too large with the DXP sort of labels, pull that back down to cloud. You live and learn. It's kind of the space. You're part of an expansionary market called WordPress, and then all of a sudden, it's 2020 or 2019, 2018. Things are just slowing down a little bit in terms of the growth curve, and then COVID hits, and that's really put a brake on everything. You come back and WordCamps are half the attendance, less, in terms of global attendance, global activity. So I think it's a humbling experience for all of us to, see what's in the portfolio, what makes sense, how do we go to market, because overall WordPress numbers can decline whilst parts of the market can grow. And that's, absolutely the approach that we take with parts of enterprise.
Noel Tock from Human Made. You can find him at humanmade.com. Anywhere else folks can find you to say thanks?
At Noel Tock is the best place. Personally, mostly Instagram these days because of doggy rescue in Ukraine, so that's where it is. And then for the more WordPress stuff, it's Twitter. So I try to separate the two a bit.
That's fantastic. Everybody else, thanks for watching today. Thanks for tuning in. The WPMinute.com, the WPMinute.com/subscribe. It's the #1 way to stay connected. We'll see you in the next video.
Appreciate it, Matt.